What do you think about this? First of all, the geopolitics of Africa and the geopolitical relationship of Africa with the rest of the world and its current conflict with the war in Ukraine.
Mhm.
What are your thoughts there?
Well, you've seen that many countries, when it was time to vote, some of them abstained, which in a way says something. I think for the Africans today, especially as represented by the African Union, because not all countries fall along the same lines, I feel like, again, we're back to way back. For the longest time, the West tries to tell us what to do. They decide for us. And here, there's trouble, meaning there's definitely a rift, major one, between most of the Western world, as represented by, Europe and America primarily, and you have Australia and all that. Um, and then them they're saying, you know, I think this is more or less an attempt to stand on their own as well. It's like, don't tell us what to do as usual. You always rope us in with when it makes sense for you. You try to rope us in, and then we're left hanging on our own. So there's this goes back to the sentiment you were talking about earlier. It's been challenging for me to watch this because remember, I have one foot also, like because there's what I get to see and hear from being in the Western world, but there's also what I get to see and hear from when in the back home. So I wear all hats, and I think this is a situation where the African Union and African nations in general are saying we don't. It's this is a case where almost like you guys are fighting. You guys are fighting. Maybe for once we have to watch out for ourselves.
Yeah, there's a sense in which um, this is the embodiment, sort of, abstaining from a vote on the war in Ukraine is a political embodiment of resistance to the influence of the West.
Right.
It's not about the war between whatever you guys are fighting.
Yes.
It's saying we're not going to let this particular empire that seems to be at the top right now, which is the United States empire in Europe, to dominate our political discourse, our geopolitical considerations. It's almost like, no, we're not touching this.
Yeah, especially that given usually, so when they need us, again, for influence, which means more power, oh, you guys vote the same way we do. And when it's all over and they go back to spreading, they go back to, how do you say that? They go back to exchanging and sharing between themselves the goodies of, their Halloween collection. We're not there when the goodies are being shared. So I think it's definitely one of those situations. But for me, it still is hard because I watch everything that's going on, and it's going to be complicated, the ramifications of all of this. I would like to see our African leaders also. What they're doing is clear, but this is a place where I'm also tempted to say yes and. Yes to the reasons you're advancing right now, of we don't want to be always siding because we're tired. We're tired of always being dragged around and taken for granted. And you vote our way, come on, guys. When you need us, we're great and everything is good. And then when it's time to go and share the goodies, we don't exist anymore. And you actually go for policies that go against us. But in this situation, though, I would like to still see us do the right thing. In my case, I was not very happy to see us going and more or less begging for, what do you call it? Cereals. Oh, please let the cereals make it so at least we get them and we don't starve. I can understand why a president would say something like that or try to negotiate something like that. But when it comes to an African president having to do that with a non-African president, I'm sorry, but for me, it's too close to begging.
listen, it's hard to be a leader. It's such a difficult dance because, in some sense, sort of the flip side of that is you're creating a market, a geopolitical market of saying we're willing to sit down at the table with America, with European leaders, with Russian leaders, with China,
Mm-hmm.
and we're going to let you guys convince us who we should collaborate with.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what sort of great nations and groups of nations do.
Do.
Now, there's a cynical, of course, a dark perspective of that, because what's in that game played by leaders, the people that hurt, people of Ukraine hurt, people of
People of
Africa can hurt,
people of Russia.
people of Russia can hurt,
Mm-hmm.
people of China, people of the United States. But it is the way of the world, and to earn you have to earn respect, and sometimes earning respect leads to the suffering of many.
Well, but except in this case, yes to all of that. And the reason why I'm actually upset with going and being like, oh, can you let at least the boats that are supposed to come to Africa full of cereals come over, the wheat and all that? It's just like, look, Africa has the highest land that you can do agriculture on.
Yes.
You know, we have the largest such surface in the world. Why is this not a time for us to try to wean ourselves off of cereals that we don't necessarily have on the ground? But no, let us go and plead.
Don't beg, create instead.
Create instead. Exactly.
Yeah.
This should have been, just like how the rest of the world, when COVID happened and China had to close off for different reasons, and since then has not, completely reopened, and people have started to realize, wow, we've got too much. We're too dependent on China for a lot of what we need. So we're gonna have to bring back some production to the US. The Europeans are doing the same. All of that. This should have been a time for African leaders to be like, we need to be serious now about food security. And maybe the stuff that maybe don't grow under our climates necessarily, can we work on coming up with different things? Now, I understand that it can take time, but if I knew that was happening at the same time that we're saying, oh, well, let the cereals come in, maybe I would be a little bit easier with it. But right now, I'm just like, is it going to be the same business as usual? And in this case, I'm just like, are we going to keep going from one massa to another massa? I mean, really?